The imagination is never quite so active as it is when one faces some emergency calling for quick and definite decision and action. In these moments of emergency, men have reached decisions, built plans, used their imagination in such a manner that they became known as geniuses. Many a genius has been born out of the necessity for unusual stimulation of the imagination, as the result of some trying experience which forced quick thought and prompt decision. It is a well-known fact that the only manner in which an over-pampered boy or girl may be made to become useful is by forcing him or her to become self-sustaining. This calls for the exercise of both imagination and decision, neither of which would be used except out of necessity. The Reverend P.W. Welsheimer is the pastor of a church in Canton, Ohio, where he has been located for nearly a quarter of a century. Ordinarily, pastors do not remain at the head of one church for so great a length of time, and Reverend Welsheimer would have been no exception to this rule if he had not mixed imagination with his pastoral duties. 3 years constitute the usual time that one pastor may remain in a given pastorate without wearing out his welcome. The church of which Reverend Welsheimer is the leader has a Sunday school of over 5,000 members, the largest membership enjoyed by any church in the United States. No pastor could have remained at the head of one church for a quarter of a century, with the full consent of his followers, and have built up a Sunday school of this size without employing the laws of initiative and leadership, a definite chief aim, self-confidence, and imagination. The author of this course made it his business to study the methods employed by Reverend Welsheimer, and they are here described for the benefit of the students of this philosophy. It is a well-known fact that church factions, jealousy, etc. often lead to disagreements which make a change in leaders essential. Reverend Welsheimer has steered around this common obstacle by a unique application of the law of imagination. When a new member comes into his church, he immediately assigns a definite task to that member, one that suits the temperament, training, and business qualifications of the individual as nearly as possible. And, to use the minister's own words, he keeps each member so busy pulling for the church that there is no time left for kicking or disagreeing with other members. Not a bad policy for application in the field of business or in any other field. The old saying that idle hands are the devil's best tools is more than a mere play upon words, for it is true. Give any man something to do that he likes to do and keep him busy doing it, and he will not be apt to degenerate into a disorganizing force. If any member of the Sunday school misses attendance twice in succession, a committee from the church calls to find out the reason for the failure to attend. There is a committee job for practically every member of the church. In this way, Reverend Welsheimer delegates to the members themselves the responsibility of rounding up the delinquents and keeping them interested in church affairs. He is an organizer of the highest type. His efforts have attracted the attention of businessmen throughout the country, and times too numerous to be mentioned he has been offered positions at fancy salaries by banks, steel plants, business houses, etc., that recognized in him a real leader. In the basement of the church, Reverend Welsheimer operates a first-class printing plant where he publishes, weekly, a very creditable church paper that goes to all the members. The production and distribution of this paper is another source of employment which keeps the church members out of mischief, as practically all of them take some sort of an active interest in it. The paper is devoted exclusively to the affairs of the church as a whole and those of the individual members. It is read by each member line by line because there is always a chance that each member's name may be mentioned in the news locals. The church has a well-trained choir and an orchestra that would be a credit to some of the largest theaters. Here Reverend Welsheimer serves the double purpose of supplying entertainment and at the same time keeping the more temperamental members who are artists employed, so they also remain out of mischief, incidentally giving them a chance to do that which they like best. We all like commendation, and many of us like flattery, but it is a debatable question as to whether the indulgence of these tendencies builds character and strength and individuality. I never see a person trying to disclose the scarlet letter on another's breast that I do not wonder if he doesn't carry some mark of disgrace which would have ruined him had he been overtaken by justice. If you have been wise and successful, I congratulate you. Unless you are unable to forget how successful you have been, then I pity you. I know I am here, I know I had nothing to do with my coming, and I shall have but little if anything to do with my going. Therefore, I will not worry, because worries are of no avail. The late Dr. Harper, who was formerly president of the University of Chicago, was one of the most efficient college presidents of his time. He had a penchant for raising funds in large amounts. It was he who induced John D. Rockefeller to contribute millions of dollars to the support of the University of Chicago. It may be helpful to the student of this philosophy to study Dr. Harper's technique, because he was a leader of the highest order. Moreover, I have his own word for it that his leadership was never a matter of chance or accident, but always the result of carefully planned procedure. The following incident will serve to show just how Dr. Harper made use of imagination in raising money in large sums. He needed an extra $1 million for the construction of a new building. Taking inventory of the wealthy men of Chicago to whom he might turn for this large sum, he decided upon 2 men, each of whom was a millionaire, and both were bitter enemies. One of these men was at that time the head of the Chicago street railway system. Choosing the noon hour when the office force and this man's secretary in particular would be apt to be out at lunch, Dr. Harper nonchalantly strolled into the office, and finding no one on guard at the outer door, walked into the office of his intended victim, whom he surprised by his appearance unannounced. "My name is Harper," said the doctor, "and I am president of the University of Chicago. Pardon my intrusion, but I found no one in the outer office, which was no mere accident, so I took the liberty of walking on in. I have thought of you and your street railway system many, many times. You have built up a wonderful system, and I understand that you have made lots of money for your efforts. I never think of you, however, without its occurring to me that one of these days you will be passing out into the great unknown, and after you are gone there will be nothing left as a monument to your name, because others will take over your money, and money has a way of losing its identity very quickly as soon as it changes hands. I have often thought of offering you the opportunity to perpetuate your name by permitting you to build a new hall out on the university grounds and naming it after you. I would have offered you this opportunity long ago had it not been for the fact that one of the members of our board wishes the honor to go to Mr. X, the streetcar head's enemy. Personally, however, I have always favored you, and I still favor you, and if I have your permission to do so, I am going to try to swing the opposition over to you. I've not come to ask for any decision today, however, as I was just passing and thought it a good time to drop in and meet you. Think the matter over, and if you wish to talk to me about it again, telephone me at your leisure. Good day, sir. I am happy to have had this opportunity of meeting you." With this he bowed himself out without giving the head of the streetcar company a chance to say either yes or no. In fact, the streetcar man had very little chance to do any talking. Dr. Harper did the talking. That was as he planned it to be. He went into the office merely to plant the seed, believing that it would germinate and spring into life in due time. His belief was not without foundation. He had hardly returned it to his office at the university when the telephone rang. The streetcar man was on the other end of the wire. He asked for an appointment with Dr. Harper, which was granted, and the two met in Dr. Harper's office the next morning, and the check for $1 million was in Dr. Harper's hands an hour later. Despite the fact that Dr. Harper was a small, rather insignificant-looking man, it was said of him that he had a way about him that enabled him to get everything he went after. And as to this way that he was reputed to have had, what was it? It was nothing more nor less than his understanding of the power of imagination. Suppose he had gone to the office of the streetcar head and asked for an appointment. Sufficient time would have elapsed between the time he called and the time when he would have actually seen this man to have enabled the latter to anticipate the reason for his call, and also to formulate a good, logical excuse for saying no. Suppose again he had opened his interview with the streetcar man something like this: "The university is badly in need of funds, and I have come to you to ask your help. You have made lots of money, and you owe something to the community in which you have made it," which perhaps was true. "If you will give us $1 million, we will place your name on a new hall that we wish to build." What would have been the result? In the first place, there would have been no motive suggested that was sufficiently appealing to sway the mind of the streetcar man. While it may have been true that he owed something to the community from which he had made a fortune, he probably would not have admitted that fact. In the second place, he would have enjoyed the position of being on the offensive instead of the defensive side of the proposal. But Dr. Harper, shrewd in the use of imagination as he was, provided for just such contingencies by the way he stated his case. First, he placed the streetcar man on the defensive by informing him that it was not certain that he, Dr. Harper, could get the permission of his board to accept the money and name the hall after the streetcar man. In the second place, he intensified the desire of the streetcar man to have his name on that building, because of the thought that his enemy and competitor might get the honor if it got away from him. Moreover, and this was no accident either, Dr. Harper had made a powerful appeal to one of the most common of all human weaknesses by showing this streetcar man how to perpetuate his own name, all of which required a practical application of the law of imagination. Dr. Harper was a master salesman. When he asked men for money, he always paved the way for success by planting in the mind of the man of whom he asked it a good sound reason why the money should be given, a reason which emphasized some advantage accruing to the man as the result of the gift. Often this would take on the form of a business advantage. Again, it would take on the nature of an appeal to that part of man's nature which prompts him to wish to perpetuate his name so it will live after him. But always the request for money was carried out according to a plan that had been carefully thought out, embellished, and smoothed down with the use of imagination.